Picture your team being able to map out the external attack surface as it grows and see the same attack vectors as a hacker does. Most tools out there do asset discovery, but stop there. Enter Detectify. It takes an inventory of exposed web assets and automates vulnerability testing for security misconfigurations, expiring subdomains, and risks in third-party software. Here's the cool part. They crowdsource payloads from leading ethical hackers. It finds bugs you actually want to fix and finds them in time. Start a free 2-week trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself. Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with ExtraHop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how ExtraHop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP. CyberGRX brings a revolutionary approach to third-party cyber risk management. Using sophisticated data analytics, real-world attack scenarios, and real-time threat intelligence, CyberGRX provides a complete portfolio analysis of a company's third-party ecosystem, helping the world's leading businesses prioritize their risks and make smart decisions. Interested in learning more? Head over to securityweekly.com/CyberGRX and demo the world's biggest third-party exchange.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Join us March 10th for our next Security Weekly Unlocked webcast for an intro to KQL queries. To register, visit securityweekly.com/webcasts. Don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings at securityweekly.com/on-demand with our very own Tyler Robinson and his name was just there. I missed it. Darwin Salazar, thank you. Voice in my ear, helping my memory. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly News. So you can follow along if you want with the stories that we're going to be talking about today. You can go to securityweekly.com/ESW263, and you can see all the news stories that are fit for discussion this week. And less stories than usual, just a few fundings here, but some interesting ones. First one here, BlueVoyant raises $250 million, which puts it in unicorn territory, makes the latest unicorn in security. And it's a Series D, and it's interesting because they kind of remind me of like an Arctic Wolf, where they're halfway between a services firm and a software firm. So I thought this one was kind of interesting. Tyler, do you know these guys at all? Have you heard of them?
I've heard of them before. They bolt on other tools to their professional services. So it is very interesting. They almost remind me of, I don't know, maybe like a Security Onion or something.
So are they white labeling other companies' products, or are these their own IP?
They have proprietary technology in there. But I know they do bolt on other tools, and they leverage other stacks for insight. And I think that's to provide an insight for their professional services.
They say it right there in the article. They say a mix of proprietary technology, third-party best-in-class tools, and professional services. Yeah. I think it's interesting. You know, we've talked about this before about these companies that I think we traditionally kind of think of as services companies raising money and being valued somewhere in between, like a software tech startup and a services company. So it's an interesting trend, I think.
Yeah,
but I think it helps.
I'm not sure I really agree with, like, I see why a lot of companies are there, and there's a lot of tech and a lot of innovation to be had, and there's a lot of problems to solve in security. But along those lines, like a lot of the really creative things that some of the smaller companies are doing, they get bolted onto these big companies, or they get bought to disappear them, fold them in and wipe the tech. Like, I think we see less good innovation as part of a lot of these acquisitions, and maybe that's the goal of some of these places, but they're still doing cool and interesting stuff. I think it would add more to the industry if we had less big snatch ups where these big companies are able to leverage this unicorn money to make someone not hesitate to say yeah.
Yeah,
I think a company like like BlueVoyant, they're trying to be almost like an MSSP on steroids. So the innovation might be slightly less important to a company like that, the native innovation versus the types of services they can offer to companies who may not want or be able to manage their own security in-house.
Yeah, a lot like a CrowdStrike or a SecureWorks or something like that. That makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm. I think if that's how you see these guys, Katie, I think a lot of the MSSPs are taking steroids these days. Like,
well, this round is certainly on steroids.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing a lot of these firms kind of, and we're actually going to talk about this even outside of security. You know, I think in general, you know, business investment and growth, you know, we're seeing both investors and some of these startups more willing to break outside of boundaries and explore different stuff. Like, for example, here, they have an MDR service. They've got traditional professional services, but then on the software side, they have this digital risk management piece, which is, you know, I guess kind of like a Risk.io, which is now part of Microsoft, and then a third-party risk management offering. You know, so it's just kind of like this. Like, I'm not sure how all these things fit together, except that they all make the money. You know, and I with a $250 million round and, you know, having services in there, I'd assume they have some pretty decent ARR, you know, certainly over some of the software startups we've seen with, you know, where we know they've barely got 10 million ARR and they've got like this multi-billion-dollar valuation. You know, I would expect the multiple to be lower here, but the actual revenue to be much higher.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, so moving on, Balbix announces a $70 million Series C, and so cybersecurity posture automation. They ring a bell here, but there's a couple firms with similar names that I get mixed up here. But yeah, so it looks like they're doing some asset management. I don't know if this pops up on competitive intel for you, Katie. But it looks like they're trying to predict the likelihood, like the amount of risk for different assets within your organization, which is, you know, I wonder how accurate something like that can be.
So this wouldn't be a one-to-one competitor. They could actually, in fact, be a great adapter or connector, because yes, they do look at assets and asset inventory, but their focus is more on the assessment of what's going on with assets than the assets themselves. And there is an aspect of vulnerability management that is inherent in asset management as well. But this is really, from my understanding and from what I know, talking with their CEO a couple of years ago, it's really about looking at where the risk vectors are versus, you know, actual inherent vulnerabilities. And most asset management tools are looking for that more foundational level and not trying to predict risk. And this is looking at that risk level. So it's tangential. There is some overlap, but it wouldn't be a one-to-one. You know, this is looking at internal, it's looking at external, it's looking at, you know, what types of risk factors you have to think about when you're trying to decide what to do with your assets versus, you know, here's a vulnerability or here's how the assets connect. It's more on that back end than on the front end.
Right. Right, like we were talking about in our first interview with Karen, you know, I think she mentioned the importance of reducing complexity, and you know, part of that is prioritizing things. You know, and certainly with any tool like this, any kind of asset management tool or any tool with management in the name, whether it be vulnerability management, asset management, you know, you end up with this giant pile of data, you know, and just struggling to figure out, you know, what's actionable and what to address first.
Right. This is very focused on risk quantification. from my understanding. And again, it's been a little while since I've really looked with them, but they were nice, smart people. This looks like a great round to help advance their company and their platform. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Maybe when we talk in 6 or 12 months from now, I'll be singing a different tune.
Yeah. Yeah, that Series C money, certainly gonna put that to work. Our next one here is an interesting one, Scope Security. I'm assuming because it's healthcare related, this might be kind of like a double meaning thing, like stethoscope and scope is in like awareness or visibility.
Yeah, my father was a colon and rectal surgeon, so scope means something else, so don't go there.
You already went there. The picture's already in my mind.
Sorry.
Thanks.
I did. I had to, because when I hear scope, it's not stethoscope.
You giggle when you hear scope. You don't think mouthwash. Wash.
Oh, yuck, no.
Opposite. All right,
Quite
back
literally.
on track. I always kind of get a little nervous when I see cybersecurity offerings that are kind of like vertical specific for something that is really more of a solved problem in the common space, like CrowdStrike, but for healthcare. Like, what's wrong with using CrowdStrike in healthcare? Like, why are you reinventing this thing? And it makes me wary that by going after one vertical specifically, maybe companies end up with a less. And I don't know anything about the company. I don't know anything about the product. But I wonder if it's trying to boil the ocean. And sell specifically to healthcare when maybe you might be better off getting some, more mainstream products in there. So I don't know your thoughts on that. Either of you, Tyler, Katie?
Well, they say here, that they're solely focused on the healthcare ecosystem. And when I think of this, and I'd love to learn more because I don't know enough about this company, but when I think of healthcare ecosystem and the idiosyncrasies that are inherent in it, it's not about access to EHRs.
Mm-hmm.
It's right. About, that, like you said, the actual device technology. So I'd love to learn what this actually means. Mike Murray, who is the head of this, he's had some great success in the past. So that certainly speaks well, but I don't think I quite understand where the gaps would be for access to and security of records.
Yeah, when I look at, and Tyler, you tell me if you see the same thing, but when I look at attacks against, healthcare organizations, they look like attacks against pretty much everything else. I don't see attackers really switching up their MO just because it's a hospital or something like that.
No, they're definitely not doing that. And I think one of the critical aspects of maybe why this is an interesting pivot or vertical they're tackling is because it's usually never the adversaries. Hospitals are easy because it's always about safety. It's always about quick access. It's always about getting information and data quickly to the people that need it, which is usually everybody, in order to make good, safe decisions. The problem you run into is with inside of these environments, they're not able to configure certain things or have security protocols or do things in a way in which other organizations are. So the security stance and means by which they go about securing the data, securing systems, securing databases, servers, all those things isn't different and isn't changed. It just is open. And so I think if they can address the issues around making sure that safety's still there, making sure hospital equipment can communicate, making sure there's no latency, maybe even some of the segmented networks around really legacy systems that can't be updated, like all of those things that are very specific to the healthcare and hospital industry, and still have it work with inside of like an EHR or EMR and have those pieces all tie together. Maybe they'll be onto something, but I've not seen anybody tackle that problem and do it very successfully.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. sort of the latency, whether or not it's one push on your phone or whatever the case may be, a lot of people in the healthcare field object to. Although it's adding a layer of security, they want access to records immediately. They don't want to take any other steps. They don't, their concern is the patient and patient care. And so that security, there's a lot more pushback on that. So very valid point. And if there's some way to eliminate that, and if that's what this company is doing, that would be great, because you're always going to be, that fight between immediate access and security is always going to be in play in this sector.
But then when the ransomware hits, it's really hard to access the information.
It is very, very hard, and then when you have to start rerouting patients because you can't sign them in, you can't access their records, that really puts a damper on a lot of things, yeah.
You can't see their dosages. You can't do any imaging. Really kind of like there's no going to paper for a lot of this stuff. Like if you need imaging of someone's abdomen or something like that, like there's no paper solution for that. Like you need the computer to work so you can use the equipment. So yeah, that's a tough one. I think, and if they can help, more power to them. I just get a little bit nervous when I see kind of like a solved problem in the market, being tackled and repackaged and relabeled as special for just healthcare or just for bankers or something like that. So I don't know, anything that can help hospitals, more power to them if it does. The next one I added during our last interview. Found out that Dr. Sharon Goldberg, CEO, co-founder at Bastion Zero, announced some, I believe it's seed funding. Yeah, $6 million in seed funding. And led by Dell Technologies Capital with participation from Akamai. That's interesting. And what she was describing, very topical, very interesting. I literally saw a really long thread discussing this kind of problem just like a week or two ago. Probably don't need to discuss that in any further detail. We got a whole interview on it. If you missed that interview, it should be one step back in your podcast player or in your YouTube playlist. Let's see. So couple of trends links here. We don't really need to dive deep into these, but there's Security Week has this really useful post they put out. They've got a lot of content on M&A, and they usually do a roundup for every month, and they list every single raise within the previous month and total it up for you. And it was 35 deals in February 2022, and it's Edward Kovacs, I hope I'm saying that right, who does all these. So he does an amazing job putting all these together. He reported on over 430 mergers and acquisitions last year. So he's a busy guy over there at Security Week. And then we've got Crunchbase, I think was... I'm assuming this is new because I haven't seen it before, but maybe they were jealous of the unicorn list over at, oh boy, now I'm going to blank on the, what is it? Insights. Help me out, Katie. What's that other Crunchbase
Yes. Market Insights?
CB Insights?
CB Insights. Thank you, Katie.
The minute you say something like that, everybody's brain freezes up. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because the short version, they have in their fave icon right there for Crunchbase is CB. So you'd think CB Insights would be part of Crunchbase, but they're actually competitors.
Right.
But yeah, now Crunchbase has its own unicorn board. Yeah, very good SEO. Everybody wants to know about the unicorns, and I guess they both, when they advertise as CB, they both get benefits from that. But Yeah, I'm still going to say I like the CB Insights one better because all the companies are categorized and they're not categorized in the Crunchbase version. Maybe they are if you're a subscriber. I mean, I'd say almost definitely they are if you're a subscriber, but I can get them categorized for free from CB Insights. So little inside tip here from Security Weekly. Makes it really easy. Just if you want to see a list of the cybersecurity startups, they have a category for cybersecurity startups on CB Insights version of this, and you can just click the sort button, and it sorts them all for you. It's nice. I mentioned going outside. Talking about trends in tech in general. Epic Games bought the service Bandcamp, which is basically a marketplace where kind of like Spotify. Like anybody can put music up on Spotify. They don't have to go through a label or anything like that, except Bandcamp has kind of specifically been a lot more community focused. They even have a Bandcamp Friday, I think they call it, where they forego their cut of the sales of music on their platform, and the creators get 100% of that. So I'm thinking, either, it could be one of two things or both of the two things. Either Epic Games, kind of the whole metaverse kind of move here. We're just seeing gaming companies and tech companies kind of diversifying into different areas here. And then the other side of it is Epic Games has been very outspoken against Apple's 30% of everything. We take 30% of everything model. Taking them to court on that, took Fortnite off. All that over that battle. So Bandcamp, the philosophy there about paying creators, the maximum amount, treating them like people instead of revenue stats, really fits in with their philosophy.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. Like I am a little surprised. Like I think you're spot on. Like either they're trying to give a big finger and kind of come up with a competitor to Apple's platform and how they offer music, or they're going to integrate that into the game, right? Like I could see independent community integrations where it didn't make sense for them to be able to sell or integrate local community bands or musicians into Fortnite as like a music or an emote or whatever they play that's inside of the game, and that would be hard to do in the market. So they're just going to integrate those two things, which would be really interesting. I'm surprised we've not seen an NFT spin up or some sort of, like you said, metaverse where character, like they already have a great marketplace for skins, emotes, accessories for the game, characters. Like I'm surprised they weren't the first to kind of hop into kind of the whole minting and exclusive offering of some of that. They already do that in their platform to an extent where, some things are only offered if you played in a certain season or it's a certain rarity. There's only so many of them. So I'm curious to see where they start to spin up and put more energy into things.
Yeah, I definitely think we need to see more of that as opposed to like a crypto startup or exchange saying that they're going to build a game. Like that doesn't end well. Like either it's not a very fun game or, they don't know how to make a game or, people just play the game as an investment tool, which, again, they're not playing for the fun of the game. So I don't think anybody's really figured that out very well yet. I've seen some cases where fans of the game have wanted NFTs, stuff like that included. And then cases where they announced they were going to do it and then fans of the game shouted them down and they reversed the decision. So really interesting to see. And what the main reason I bring some of these non-security specific trends into the news here is because at the folks running these companies, investing in these companies, I think a lot of these trends you do see across, different types of products, different markets. A lot of the trends that we see in cybersecurity maybe start somewhere else, maybe start on the tech side, maybe start in other industries. And it gives us, I think it gives us some insight into, what you might be seeing, especially in the merger and acquisition space. All right, moving on. Palo Alto, who, has been very busy with, they rebranded their stuff. Everything's Cortex now. They've got Cortex XSOAR, which used to be Demisto. they got Cortex XDR. They coined the term XDR. And I guess, now Prisma, they acquired a bunch of companies, put together Prisma. And as far as I can tell, I haven't gone super deep on this. This might be another product like XDR that they built entirely on the inside. I don't think I saw any acquisitions, that contributed to this. But Cortex XSIAM. I don't know if I'm supposed to pronounce that, but it's intended as a SIEM competitor or a SIEM disruptor, perhaps.
I thought that's what XEDR was supposed to be doing too.
No, so they're very specific about. So I spent a lot of time with XDR products, and they're very specific about like you want to refrain from shoving all your events, all your intel into your XDR product. You want to put in just enough to have good signal. And, I think generally the best practice there is if you shove too much into it, you'll destroy that product's XDR's ability to do good detection. So it's, the difference with a SIEM is like, give me everything just in case I need it. Whereas XDR is give me just enough that I can detect attacks very quickly, if not in real time and with automated responses. So the use cases, I think, are slightly different, but you're right, Tyler. I think they do overlap somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, more visibility is always better. It just is, at some point, like, let's just get our visibility right and kind of call it something so we know what to help clients attach to. Otherwise, it's kind of all like rolling the dice to figure out what integrates, what doesn't, what logs you're going to get, what good visibility you have, what you don't have, and then you have to bolt a bunch of products together to make it all cover a good portion of what you need. Well,
and the irony here is, I think a big part of the inspiration for XDR is SIEM's inability to solve that problem. That like XDR wouldn't exist if SIEM had done a good job with helping defenders with detection and response. So you have to be really well intentioned here, and we've seen a lot of XDR players that throw a lot of humans into the mix. They've got teams, detection engineers, professional services helping make sure customers deploy these products correctly. Because if you don't, you just end up with just another, another failed product here, that becomes ripe for disruption, which, I think a lot of traditional SIEM is and has been for a while. But, we got to make sure what we're replacing it with isn't more shelfware.
Right. I think that, the one thing that they said here was this is offered at 50% off what you would consider a traditional SIEM. And for a lot of companies, that's going to be really attractive because a lot of the SIEMs out there are really expensive and it's really hard. So that's that part's certainly attractive, at least.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, if you're a Palo Alto customer, you've already got 2 or more Palo Alto products. Makes a whole lot of sense to give this a look. Maybe do a POC. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next one here, Infra, the open source identity engine. Very interesting. Couldn't tell a whole lot about it. Kind of some of what Dr. Sharon Goldberg was talking about rings in here, but there's just not enough details to understand exactly what they're doing. So it looks like it's very much selling to the DevOps engineers, the cloud engineers, looking to replace the password, kind of bring SSO to admin workflows, maybe. But it's very early. I think I don't think they even have a seed round announced yet. So this is very early days for them. I just heard somebody talking about them the other day and threw them in here. So mostly just being teased at this point. So standards here, it's interesting. So the same company that's behind the beloved SIG, which I'm sure, Katie, you have probably run into at some point on the vendor side. I think if you're anywhere near sales and marketing, you end up helping fill out these third-party vendor management questionnaires, and very, very much a market that another one ripe for disruption that really needs to be fixed. But that same company came up with the SIG, which is essentially a spreadsheet, but a standardized list of questions that you can ask, has tried to standardize the taxonomy around third-party monitoring and vendor management. So that's a thing that you can click this link, you can go download it, and it's a fairly detailed taxonomy list of the different terms and the different things that you want to put potentially in a questionnaire.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to see a lot of these questionnaires updated. I'm just reading through this one. It seems better, but the questions that get asked are ones that it's always quantitative, right? It's not really qualitative there in what they're asking, and you can answer it in one of two ways usually, which you can phrase in a way that is not lying, but is also not getting out what they need to know in order to better.
I saw a cartoon the other day, and it was, what do I put for this question on the vendor questionnaire? And the response was just yes to everything. And yeah, some funny responses to that I saw. I think that resonated with some folks. But it's tough. It's definitely a tough market. We have to build these trust relationships between businesses, but at the same time, businesses are very sensitive with sharing how not secure they are, and rightfully so, I guess.
Especially if it's for procurement or cyber insurance or one of those things that they have a inherent mechanism that they want to get done.
Yeah. All right, two more stories here. Zane Lackey joins Andreesen Horowitz as a general partner. So very, very interesting seeing cybersecurity founders and CISOs move into the VC space. We saw this once before, and I'm going to blank on at least part of his name, but the OpenDNS, I believe David, I think he was involved at Andreesen Horowitz. I don't know if he was a GP, but I'm Googling live. Look out. It's slow. David, I can't even pronounce that. Ulovich? But he sold OpenDNS to Cisco, and yes, he was also a general partner. So certainly not the first here, but an interesting trend, especially that both of them went into A16Z. That's very interesting. So assuming we'll see a lot more security and tech investments coming from A16Z with both of them involved.
Yeah, those are some big players and names. It's not their first rodeo. I am curious to see. Sometimes is it just you want to do the next thing, start up the next big idea, or did the idea spawn first and you're going to do something with that idea between people you trust? I think those are two completely different companies with completely different outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. All right, moving on to our squirrel story. I have to prepare a little bit for this. I have to jump into the metaverse.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm not sure I even understood the squirrel story. Just to be clear, I watched that video and I maybe I'm a Luddite, but I was like, why? What? I don't understand what this is and how does it work?
Yeah, so apparently you can create fields that you can feel using ultrasonic sound. So I assume like it's very limited because it's all coming from one direction. It's coming from something that you set on a table, and it can push stuff out, maybe doesn't look like even 180 degrees, but depending on how the frequencies of that sound, like I don't understand how the technology works, but they can create the feeling of an object. I don't know what your first impressions.
I get it.
Right. So you can feel things, like it can create shapes that you can feel. And like my first thought was, what is the early software going to look for this, and exactly how depraved is it going to be?
And this is the golden stitch. This is where VR porn then comes into reality, and this is probably the first time we'll see porn probably be one of the first VR things that leverages these kind of technologies. Whether we've seen similar adult things have done this and correlated it with visualization. So I don't know. Like this sounds like this could be really fun to abuse and maybe cause potential harm through. But it's just sound. So unless you're able to make it do frequencies it's not supposed to, or break someone's eardrums, or cause bowels.
I didn't even think of that.
Like there's some cool things you can do with sound, but I see this being the first step in many for haptic feedback with inside of a VR or AR.
Yeah, there are militaries that have sonic weapons. That is definitely a thing. So abuse cases are certainly something I hope are being considered with like even Kickstarter projects, and maybe not, because so it looks like they've been working on this for a long time. Somewhere here, they show the first version of it, which was like the size of a mini fridge. Now they've gotten it down to this really nice, compact, 2-inch thick kind of slab that you put on a table. They say the size of a 13-inch laptop. But yeah, hopefully they're thinking about that kind of stuff, because let's be honest, like at this stage, the software support probably isn't going to be there. There's going to be a few good demo apps, I think. I don't expect to see a ton of adoption. Okay, since 2016. So they've been doing it for a good 6 years now. But don't expect more than like a really interesting gimmick or demo of what the future could be like to show off to friends. I don't see anybody using this in a Zoom meeting on a daily basis or anything like that.
I mean, a Zoom meeting, you're gonna slap someone or give someone
that would be a great use case for it.
But see, like it's so directional though that you have to reach out over it. Like you would need two of them. You would need one on the table and one mounted on the wall in front of you to get slapped properly.
See, I foresee them making a pad that you stand on that then pushes things up and around you.
Oh,
or maybe
boy.
A 3-page, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those things where I'm of two minds. On the one hand, I want to make fun of it and laugh about it. On the other hand, like, yeah, I want to try it out. Like, I'll admit, like, the first time I tried VR, which, I put this thing on jokingly, but I don't think I've charged or used this thing in like a year. So I don't regret the purchase, though. The Oculus Quest is a great price if you just want to see what the fuss is all about. You want to try it out. So I'm not disappointed that I don't use it more. But I do like to try this stuff out, because it's different reading about it, especially with metaverse VR type stuff, than actually experiencing it. So, especially if I'm going to make fun of it, I want to use it first and then make fun of it. All right.
I mean, if they want to send a free trial, nobody will. I don't think anybody on this call would object to that.
I'll back the project and just mail it around. Like everybody will get like a month with it or something. We can just go in on one, maybe, or not.
I'm thinking a month for me might be too long. Tyler might be more into it. I don't know.
I really want to see what kind of offensive capabilities I can make this thing do.
Yeah, Tyler's got a completely different plan for this thing. You're going to see it mounted, like a mobile version of it, mounted on his chest, like knocking his kids off their feet.
And I'm going to hide it in like
That's
a
true.
coffee
You get
table
out
or
a lot of
something.
virtual aggression.
Yeah, have it in a coffee table and just have it like randomly your coffee just vibrates off the table every day at the same time.
Ghosts, there you go. You can make a good haunted house with a set of these. There you go. Oh, you could. You could make.
You make them fill it.
You can make. Oh boy. You absolutely could. You could make somebody really believe in ghosts with some of these cleverly hidden in a haunted house. 100%. I think you nailed it, Tyler. Haunted house coming up.
Oh boy.
All right. Thanks so much, Katie and Tyler, for joining me today. Really appreciate you jumping in, Tyler, last minute.
Oh.
Thanks, Katie.
Absolutely. See you next week.
And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly Ghost House is coming soon. See you next time.